I'm Gabe Lullo, and welcome to the Do Hard Things podcast. We're talking to go-to-market leaders and entrepreneurs who have conquered the challenges, the hustle, and the grind. Get ready for real talk, real insights, and no fluff.
But the hardest thing in the world right now is not actually closing deals, it's actually getting somebody's attention.
If you don't have that hook in that first 5 to 10 seconds, guess what? They're going to scroll to the next one.
You need to go in and you need to make it sound like yourself. That's the biggest piece of the puzzle. And I promise you, we can all tell.
The people that are trolls and the people that are haters never done the thing that you're doing.
I love doing this podcast because I get a front row seat to some of the greatest minds in sales.
Gone are the days of saying stay in your lane. When you're an executive leader and you're an enterprise-wide leader, there are no lanes. You've got to be partners.
Curiosity is like when the type of questions you ask is sometimes the value that you bring.
I need you to tell me when you're ready to buy or what you're ready to do. And I think it's changed so much into like adding more value. And if you're not doing that, then you're definitely going to come off as desperate.
High pressure selling is like a dinosaur tactic at this point.
No parent is like, oh, you should be a salesperson when you grow up, right? Everyone's like a doctor, lawyer, whatever crap. It's never salespeople.
It's not your job to motivate people. It's your job to find motivated people.
It's not cockiness. It's not arrogance. It's confidence knowing I know this and I know that I can help you.
From where I started to where I am today is all because I learned how to sell.
And there's too many people who have only been doing this for 5 freaking minutes. Sit down, close your mouth, actually go out there and get yourself beat up, then come back and tell me if something is dead or not.
That is exactly why I started this podcast, because right there, that's the epitome of doing hard things.
Welcome back, everybody, to the Do Hard Things podcast. I'm your host, Gabe Lullo, and I am absolutely jacked to be introducing our guest today. He's a friend of the company. He's a friend of mine, and he's someone we have a ton of respect for across the pond there. Meet Giulio, and he's, the unconventional force in cold calling, I like to say. He has a mission to transform cold calling landscape. He believes, while cold calling may be, not that glamorous, it's one of the most effective ways to boost your sales pipeline, and we're going to hear from him on why. He specializes in helping B2B sellers and SMEs. Giulio tackles challenges that makes cold calling feel like a chore, but he's here to make it fun again. And he has a comedy show about cold calling. He's someone that is so memorable. He's also has a pretty stoic approach and flair for the humor. And he turns, that painful process of cold calling into a really engaging experience. And also, if you're struggling to make any calls or cold calls or feeling daunting at all, he is someone that is instrumental in, having your back and teaching you unique and, different perspectives and different coaching style that is maybe not for everyone, but those who are ready to embrace the weird, he's an absolute game changer. So Giulio, welcome to the podcast, man. I'm so excited you're here.
I'm so excited to be here, to be honest. It's probably the best title for a podcast I've ever been on, that's for sure.
Well, and let's get into it because I appreciate you saying that. And it's funny because I always ask this question in these podcasts, like it's all about doing hard things. And we're always talking about sales. We're talking about entrepreneurship. We're talking about cold calling today. Is it really that hard? Like I know people who do a lot of other things. I have a friend that puts solar panels on roofs. I have a friend that, does landscaping. I have a friend that builds houses and does concrete work. And that to me is hard. Is what we're doing really that hard? Why is it so hard?
I mean, look, unfortunately, the answer is yes, in the sense that what you mentioned, I also would never pick being like, I was a waiter. That was way harder than cold calling, I think. But it's more that our brain can get used to physical pain and fatigue way more than it can get used to rejection. Just your brain will never actually get used to social rejection, which is what you face regularly in cold calling. So unless you can find a way to diffuse that, that's why so many people hate it. That's why so many people struggle with that. And I think that's probably why it's such a topic in a negative way.
Yep. So I always love hearing an origin story because, what I found in sales and most of the times, all entrepreneurs, they don't go to school for this stuff, right? Like, how did this start? You have a massive impact on LinkedIn. You are, everyone remembers you. You are leading the cold call community with humor and, your journey, I'm sure, is incredible. But not everyone knows where, people start and come from. So what's your origin story? Tell me a little bit about your journey and how you got here today.
Mm, I always start with a very simple story. I was a philosophy graduate, and in my last year, I was in the toilet to one of the main building, and there was a writing on the wall next to the toilet paper with the arrow down saying, "Get your philosophy degree here." And I remember them. I was like, "Crap, maybe I gotta really figure out what I'm gonna do after this." And I started looking into, like, these tests that tell you what you should be doing. And HR kept coming up. It's like, you're good with people. You're good with people. Because no one tells you, right? Sales is an actual job. Because no parent is like, oh, you should be a salesperson when you grow up, right? Everyone's like a doctor, lawyer, whatever crap. It's never salespeople. And so HR seemed to be such a good option. And getting HR is not easy in Europe. So I was like, okay, apart about recruitment, there seem to be plenty of jobs for recruiters. So a recruiter's like, yeah, make 100K. I was like, wow, I could talk to people and make 100K. That sounds pretty good. And so I applied to 70 recruitment jobs, got 5 interviews, and one of them took me. And on the first day, I realized, oh, this is a sales job. And yeah, this was like, we're talking about 12 years ago now. And there was a phone. And on the first day, we were calling people. And I think that's really where it's all developed. I've never been much of an email guy. So, like, yeah, after those so many years do cold calling, you just kind of get the knack of it, I guess.
That's awesome. It's funny. I started in recruitment too. I think they just hire anybody, right?
Yeah,
They'll hire anyone off the street.
like this, I do think it's one of the hardest sales jobs because you're dealing with, it's a double sales job, and it's incredibly crowded.
Right.
Recruitment, real estate, forex, like it's very, very difficult type of markets.
Yeah. So cold calling. There's all these different things right now on the internet saying all these different theories about cold calling. Can you, share what's your specific strategy that's really helped drive growth through authentic cold calling efforts?
I think that I was extremely lucky to meet, when I left my recruitment job, I decided I want to be a sales trainer, and I was cold calling mainly in Italy, and cold calling in Italy is easy. You got to get people off the phone. That's the problem,
Really?
right? Yeah, compared to like cold calling in Anglo-Saxon countries, is so much harder. And when I started calling to the UK, I was like, bloody hell, this is hard. And I saw these guys. We have a meeting, guys, Zach and Jack. They were kept posting a lot about content, and so I cold called one of them, and I basically called him to pitch myself to be an intern for free for a week. And that's when I really learned that, like, they have a really really psychological approach, and I must say, like, 70% of my style comes from them. Maybe not the weirdness, that's all mine, but and it's a really psychological approach, and that's what I think most people are struggling with these days. Because 5 years ago, before COVID, really, you could cold call and not be very good at it, and you probably be fine. And then suddenly people started working from home, harder to reach them. People started to get calls on their mobiles, so therefore being a bit more guarded. And I think we completely lost the psychological approach to it, or at least what it wasn't there to start with. And I think that the major thing is, are you doing calls that your prospect wants to receive? And if you're not, then no wonder it sucks.
So it's interesting, similar to Jack's company, which we're a huge fan of theirs. We deal with a lot of different clients and a lot of different types of verticals or products. And the biggest question all of our clients, and I'm sure they say the same thing to you when you come in and train their teams, is how do your teams or how do your SDRs are going to know our product well enough, right? Like, how are they going to know, our business? We're the ones that know our technology. They got to go through 8 months of training, product training, to know and be experts in our stuff. And then I have to start telling them, hey, listen, we're experts in cold calling, and we don't need to be experts in your product to be an expert in cold calling. And they have a hard time believing me.
Yeah.
And you're laughing, I'm assuming, because you're on my side, where to your point, like, it's all psychological. Like you can jump on pretty much 5 different products across 5
Mhm.
different days, and you'd be booking appointments for every one of those brands without any hesitation. Why is that? And what is it that you do or you train your, your sellers and your clients to bring that through? It's so important.
So look, it's interesting you say that. By the way, like you're being too nice. I don't think I could jump 5 different products. But I'm not that smart at learning the actual basic pitch. But I think the main focus is that all of my calls are focused on the prospect. Like, literally, I never introduce myself. I always talk about challenges, not what I do. And literally 99.9% of the meetings I book, people don't actually know what I do apart from it's cold calling training. They just don't know.
Right.
Right. And they jump on the meeting because I talked about them and I told them, look, you've got problem X. I understand that without a doubt. If I told you could fix it, would you let me show you how? Yeah. And that's the thing. And that's the real skill, I think, to just have a conversation about them and not a conversation about yourself, which is actually good skill in life generally, I would say.
Yeah, absolutely. I look at sales and cold calling no different than being a lawyer in a trial, right? It's all about asking the right questions and they're on the witness stand. And I think that's really where, you shine so well. Like we watch your content, we're huge fans of your videos. We're going to talk about LinkedIn in a moment, but you know, everything that you do and everything that you train has really nothing to do with sales per se or promotion of a product, let's call it that. Has everything to do with understanding your buyer, asking the right questions. How do you know what questions to ask when you're live on a call? Because again, to do hard things is our podcast, right?
Mhm.
Email and writing emails, I look at that as that's like a movie. It's predetermined, it's scripted, it's
Mhm.
edited. You know what I mean? It
Mhm.
takes years, months to
Mhm.
to create the movie and then get it out. But on
Mhm.
cold calling, the reason why it's
Mhm.
hard, it's like Saturday Night Live because it's live,
Mhm.
right? You have to be ready to go because it's live. It's not pre-recorded. So
Mhm.
how do you know how to navigate these questions on the fly?
I mean, look, people probably look at the videos like, wow, he's so smart. And I'm really not. It's just a lot of repetition. I mean, the objections at the end of the day, they're almost always the same, right? And as long as you know what
Right.
angle you should take on an objection to light perhaps a sorry, to put a different perspective on the problem, then it's a lot simpler. And once your brain knows what to do because you practice enough times, doesn't have to be thousands, but enough times, then your brain is more focused on listening what's actually going on, and that gives you the different nuances. Like, well, so I'll give you an example. I had a guy today. He's like, "We're good," and I'm like, "Okay, when you say you're good, is that because you don't have these problems, or you wouldn't trust someone cold calling to fix them?" And just because I've heard that he was kind of interested, but probably didn't trust me, and he was like, "Well, I would just want my guys to do it." And I was like, "Okay, I'll ask you one last question." I was like, "Yeah, what is it?" So I guess then, if you currently always just doing it yourself, is it possible that perhaps you're missing some tricks by having someone else looking into it? And that's when he went, "Yeah, okay, fair enough. I probably would like to hear what you got to say." And it wasn't the best meeting, wasn't the like perfect, but I knew that that question was gonna make him think about it differently, and it came because I've got the training to know how to reply or how to reply so that I don't have to think about that. I can focus on what he's saying instead. That's what I would. So short answer is practice.
Yeah, absolutely. But I also think it has a lot to do with courage, right? You know, most reps who heard, now we're good, they're just going to move on to the next one. But you
Mhm.
actually, I think, took us through just 3 questions, and you're doing it in a way which is unique because you're not defensive, you're not pushing back, you're not rude, but you ask pretty audacious and bold questions,
Mhm.
which is what I think needs to happen in order to get people, look like, yeah, maybe you are right, maybe I'm doing it wrong. Like, how do you get someone to think about, hey, I probably am doing this wrong,
Mhm.
by asking those bold questions and having that courage? Like, what would you advise people? And our audience is all salespeople typically.
Mhm.
What would be your advice to get them the courage to ask those types of questions?
I think when I was training like sales teams, like as in I was managing sales teams, sorry, I used to have this little game that I would tell them to play with themselves, which is one more. And it's like when you want to hang up because you're uncomfortable, you push yourself to do one more thing. And that's how you, because every time you have a call, every time you do anything, right, you can either decide to cultivate one habit or the other, right? I'm a cold shower guy, right? So I've cold showered almost every day for the last 2.5 years. And it's now because every day I can
Wow.
decide to either have a cold shower. Yeah, like it's again like a little bit of madness in that. Um, and every day you can decide to have a warm shower, to have a cold shower. So, but that decision decides the habit I'm gonna nurture. So, and it's the same on a call. If you hear we're good, and you push yourself to go, can I have one last question? And you even ask it with this tone, can I have one last question before you go? Wait, yeah, go on. And then you push yourself to ask that question. And you know, many times I say, can I have another last question? And then they're like, I thought that was your last one. I was like, well, I got plenty, you know? So that's, and I think pushing yourself to go one extra mile, it's what like gets you. It's like the one more rep in the gym, the one more mile when you run, right? The eating does 100 calories less to lose. It's all this compound effect, I would say.
Yeah, a compound effect. It's funny. My mentor always said, Gabe, that extra 10%, it will change 90% of your results.
Yeah.
And just that one last, rep, it's a one last question. And you're a master at it. Like you get that answer and like, that brings up another point. Let me ask you another one. And it's so it's just so good to see you do it. Tonality, right? We're talking about what to say, repetition,
Mhm.
practice,
Mhm.
asking good questions. It's the same objections, right? So like you got to know your objections, you got to know them. They're the same ones. You got to learn all that. There's a lot of memorization there, a lot of
Mhm.
wordsmithing that you
Mhm.
do. But then the whole other side of it, it's not about what you say, they say, right? It's about how
Mhm.
you say it. So
Mhm.
you just was talking about how, hey, one last question, like the way you articulated your tonality and asking
Mhm.
it with that
Mhm.
curiousness or a little bit of
Mhm.
confusing. I always compare it to like the actor, right? Like
Mhm.
the words are the words for everyone. It's a script, for the movie, but the performance is what makes the actor successful.
Of course.
You have to put some acting in. It's not a manipulation. It's
Mhm.
not you're not taking advantage, but you are using your tonality um, to make an impact. How important is tonality, and how do you approach that?
I think it's really makes so much of a call. I mean, look, you could say the total wrong stuff and a great tone won't save you, but you could save average stuff with a good tone and it will save you. I think it's hugely important. I do believe, though, very strongly that people overstress this because tonality comes by you being comfortable. And this is actually one of my biggest mantras when I'm training teams is like, we have this perception, especially when I have my North American teams, that salespeople should be like, Jordan Belfort, right? Just like Grant Cardone, like, and actually there's so many introverted sellers that are phenomenal, right? And the problem is that we sometimes, especially with entry level, we try to train them to sound like someone they're not. And that's where the tonality fails. Because they'll try to ask that really arrogant question with a tone that's just off. So I think it's really about finding your own style. And everyone can have their own style. There's not one thing that rules. You can say the right stuff, but the style in which you do it is yours. And I think the practice. So what will come is the comfort. And so that's what's gonna get your tone right. It's not gonna repeat it 1,000 times in front of the mirror because when adrenaline is gonna hit you because a person picked up or told you no, all your practice on the mirror is not gonna be as useful. I'm not saying don't warm up, but I'm saying if the more you call, the better you get at it anyway.
Yep. So let's switch gears here and talk about networking. Your LinkedIn strategy, your content, You're creating amazing content. You have a massive following. Um, that's, why is that important? And why do you think content, I call it content and calls, like that's where we're seeing the go-to-market space, living right now.
Yeah.
Email, in my opinion, is the worst it's ever been. And
Yeah.
if you're not picking up the
Unfortunately.
phone, and if you're not getting and creating your own brand on social, you're doing it wrong. And I heard a call you were on with us, and you said you hate you actually don't like the color yellow, but yet you're all up in yellow. So that
Yeah.
to me is also interesting when it comes to your
Yeah.
brand. I know you have some things to talk about there, but
Yeah.
what is branding and why is it important? How is LinkedIn helping you? Take me through that brand, metamorphosis that you've gone through since you started your own business.
Of course. I mean, look, I figured out. I come from again a recruitment agency. I was managing up to 40 people at one point, and it was stressful. And one of the things I realized is that I didn't really want to manage people. And the only problem with cold calling, even if you have an amazing tech stack and you speak to a bunch of people, is they still a one-on-one, while content is a one-to-many. And is a one-to-many that's way more effective than emails or any other type of like one-to-many prospecting you can do. So what I've realized very quickly is in order for people to buy, they need to trust me. And as much as they can like a cold call, it's so much easier once they see my LinkedIn. Some people might book the meeting on the call, but they buy also because they see my LinkedIn. And I think like LinkedIn is, I personally hate LinkedIn. It's like my least favorite platform. It's unforgiving. Microsoft is quite hard with it in terms of their rules. It's an ads platform, really. But obviously, it's a place where you can access so many people so quickly. And I think the major, actually, the one tip I'll give to anyone is spend money. Because I had so far in the last 2 years, I think I spent like 30 grand in coaching, more or less, in coaching, outsourcing mentors, and everyone is sitting there like, oh, like if I spend this money, I can't use it for that. It's like, shut up, man. Like you don't want to spend $60 for a dialer, and so you dial one by one, which is costing you so much time that you will never get back. So for me, the pivotal point on LinkedIn where I engaged Ivana from Authored Up. Authored Up is a platform that you can use to write your content. She had access to millions of data. I had her on a podcast I was doing. I was like, you know everything about LinkedIn. I'm gonna hire you, and I paid her a ton of money. I was like, I don't care, but you're gonna tell me how this works better. And that's when I started to get like go probably like from 20 to 50,000 impressions a week. Then the second was the videos. That's when no, actually, sorry, no, the second was the cold calling. So I was a sales trainer before, and then I was like, nah, you find out what works and you double down on it. So if you're whatever you're doing, if you let's say you're a rep in cyber and you talk about 3 different problems, and every time you talk about one of these problems it works 3 times more than the others, that's what you talk about. You give the people what they want. And I've realized I know cold calling best. I'm going to focus on that. And one of my things that saves me is that I'm one of the very few cold calling trainers. Most of the people are sales trainers who also do cold calling training. I'm the cold calling trainer. And so that already gave me a niche. All of my posts are about that. And the third part was the videos and the look. So you go in the place that no one else is doing. So everyone is doing the talking head videos that they give you tips, but they're not showing you how. And honestly, out of my competitors, 95% hasn't made a cold call in the last 5 years. But they're giving you tips about cold calling. And I'm like, well, sorry, mate. I'd rather listen to someone who's actually doing it. So I would say like standing out, hiring the right people to help you, etc., etc. These are all the things that will help you build that brand as quickly as possible.
Yeah. I mean, from running a company that does 11 million cold calls a year, I can easily say that you are the best, if not one of the best in the space. So
That's a big compliment. I appreciate that.
I'm telling you, man, you're unique. Now, you're also, and you mentioned a little bit, you're memorable, right? I think that's what's so important is that how do you be memorable, and how do you become, you? When I look at you, I don't even need to remember your name. I know exactly who you are as soon as I see you, and then boom, I know it's Giulio, right?
Yeah.
How do people who are emerging, because we see this, we see SDRs, right? Like Sarah Uy, it just started her own business. She was at Pareto. She got, 60, 70,000 followers. The Allen sisters, you know what I mean? Over, they have 30, 50, 60,000 followers. SDRs, there's a lot of people who are doing great things. What's your advice to the emerging SDRs to create a brand and be memorable like yourself?
I think it's again maybe going back to being a bit brave to some extent. Because I have
Okay.
a quite high ghosting meeting ratio. Like at least for someone that does it for a living, it's like probably around 20%. And it's because sometimes people see my LinkedIn and it's like, oh, hell no, I don't want to work with this guy. Right. And because they see the weirdest, they see dressing yellow, they think it's childish no matter what, right? Now, the fact is you don't need to appeal to everyone. And it's better to have 20% really engaged potential buyers or 10 whatever than to be lukewarm for a vast majority, because lukewarm is not going to get things done. So in my case, the yellows come through. These are actually reading glasses, and they're against blue light. I actually wear these 24/7. I know when I thought this, I was like, okay, I could wear those. And then there was a bit of yellow in my logo. I was like, I'm gonna just set up a gold outfit. And I actually stole this from Benjamin Dennehy because he was like having suspenders and a red hat. I'm like, I hate hats, but I can get a white headset. I can dress formal, and I'm gonna be different from the others. And I think that's okay. Give you a super example. For you're talking about SDRs. I currently have 2,500 connection requests pending. Right, the ones that I accept immediately are the ones that send out. I've got a guy that accepted last week is like rumored to be Batman. I was like, this is brilliant, right? or something that stands out. When I just see SDR act, I'm like, man, like it's not doesn't do it. So I think appealing
Right.
to the niche is better than being neutral to the masses.
All right. So can we get tactical? Can we get into it? The cold call, some little bit of
Go on.
advice from you.
Go.
Connection rates are, everyone is saying, is admittedly down. There's a lot of
Mhm.
tools. There's a lot of things out there. I
Mhm.
think tech stacks are a little bloated these days, right? Everyone's just
Mhm.
buying technology to get the next cheat code. But
Yep.
there are some things out there, and you don't have to drop names, but
Mhm.
just think through, like, what if you're having an SDR team who admittedly is
Mhm.
just doing email, which is a majority of them,
Mhm.
it's not working anymore.
Mhm.
How do we get to this cold calling level? Like, how do we do cold calling, but don't
Mhm.
do it in a way that
Mhm.
is just going to not work? How do we make it effective as fast as
Mhm.
possible?
Mhm.
What would be your top three things to do?
I think look, tech stack for me would be very simple. As in, I would get Cognizant um, for the bulk data, or full and rich if you want to go really targeted, just because you can get a bunch of data from them and they're both quite effective. I would then get that data cleaned. So that by cleaned I mean like you get numbers validated, etc. That there's another company I use called Sure Connect that I can get the pickup rate quite high.
Yeah,
That's what I use
Laxman
for
over
my
there.
yeah,
Yeah.
Laxman. Like that's what I use for my comedy show. And actually, the further lane, this is probably not something that many people do. I then outsource to a VA the further cleaning of that data because that's cheap. Like
Wow.
I get a guy for $5 an hour that will go over LinkedIn and ensure this person is relevant. So, for example, for me, if they don't have at least 5 cold callers in the team, it's not an ICP. I don't want to call them. So he'll go and check that they've got 5 people that I've got like 5 people cold calling between UK and US in their team. So what then does is that I then have a list that's smaller, but it's far more likely to be relevant. And then at that point, you got decisions to make. So I think if you're in the higher TAM, so if you got big TAM, so total addressable market, and you can call many people, then you get a parallel dialer. And this is where like you get I personally use Alto just because it's very effective. The delay is really short compared to most of the ones I've seen out there. And that gonna cost you like all of this is gonna start to put some setbacks. Don't get me wrong, it's like it's gonna probably come around like $500-600 a month, but you then have a machine on your hands. You have someone that can have like 10 to 15 connected conversations with relevant ICPs. And alternatively, if your ticket is really high or your TAM is small, I would then use a power dialer, something like Trellis. Quite like them. You can plug into your HubSpot. You just call directly, and the reason why is that because at that point I would do multi-channel. I would go like call, voicemail telling you, hey, I'm gonna message you on LinkedIn. I'm gonna drop you an email, and the email will be very simple. Hey, you struggling with this problem? If you are, I'm gonna give you a call back tomorrow. And then and that's what all my sequence will look like. Very phone based still, but then obviously I don't want to call if I don't have thousands of people to call. I want to increase that meeting rate as much as possible. So that would be the way in which I would build out my like if I started an SDR agency tomorrow, that's exactly how I would do it.
Got it. Love it. So I saw your shirt. Mine actually is being sent to me as well. So I'm excited. I was hoping we can wear them together on this podcast, but the timing was off. But this AISDR, fuck AISDR movement is what I think they say over the pond, controversy. Is that how you say? We say controversy over here. But the
Yeah.
reality is like, AI's here.
Yep.
And we saw it last year, like, oh my God, everyone's gonna get fired. Cold calling is done. And then we bet on that's not gonna happen.
Yeah.
And then now we're seeing what everyone was saying was going to work, not work, and it's backfiring in a big way. And what's your thoughts on this whole AI SDR movement, man? Like, what's your feeling on this?
Am I allowed to swear?
Yeah, you absolutely can swear. All adults will listen to this.
Okay, perfect. So I would say, look, the problem is
I mean, we're Italian family too, so it's part of our
okay.
DNA as well over here.
Good. Well, I would say, look, and this is very blunt for the audience. If you're shit, AI will take your job. Period. Right.
Yep.
Even if you're an SDR, because if you're not good, if you can't challenge, if you can't listen, AI will take your job because AI will do that better than you. And honestly, I've listened to some of the AI calls, and they are better or some really bad SDRs. Period. Right. So what AI is gonna do is gonna power up the good or the average to good to become even better. And then don't get me wrong, Gabe. There might be a point that everyone is replaced by AI. But why would I worry about something I can't control? What I can worry about is if I keep getting better at my job, there's a very unlikely chance that I'll be replaced by AI. And it's that simple. That's literally all there is. So yeah, AI is here. AI will take some of our jobs, that shit ones. And as long as you're keeping up and you're like keeping to get better and better, and you use your stack well, etc., you're gonna be completely fine.
That's awesome. So inspecting what you expect, right? AI is easy to control and manage because it's robots, computers, and you just program it to do what you want it to do. People, it's sometimes harder, right? Because it's like herding
Yeah,
cats.
very much.
So how do you get a group of cold callers working cohesively together where it's positive for the company and you're not, letting those shit ones by where they could get better or letting, just the ones dominate and potentially leave you and then you have a huge gap. So how do you manage a crew of cold callers with different strengths, weaknesses, dynamics, all of those things?
I think, look, I'll preface this by saying that managing cold callers is the hardest job in sales. That's period. And people tell me enterprise sales is hard. It's like, well, no, you're just playing politics. It's not the headache of managing people making cold calls, period. So for those of you that do that out there, like kudos to you, because I used to do it, and it's one of the reasons why I went solo. What I saw work, we had like 40 hires a month from my previous company, so we had a pretty tight process. And the number one thing, first of all, is expectations. So you set very clear expectations of what the job is, how does it work, what's the bad. I remember my first thing, my final interview would be like, there's going to be days that like I describe sales like water in a bag which got a little small in it. It has a small hole in it. Sales will find your weakness and it will pound on it. And it's up to you whether you respond to it or you let it break you. And cold calling is this amplified. So I think setting expectation is going to be hard, blah, 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 from the start. Then having clear expectations moving forward. So I think, like if I'm ramping up a new team of SDRs, they've got to know that I don't expect them to book a meeting the first day, but I do expect them to get their opener pitch right after a couple of weeks, and then to respond to objections. And then if once they can do that, they can book meetings, right? So I think very clear expectations, and then a very clear process to help those expectations, which is training and coaching. Not, hey, we listen to a call, this is what you're doing wrong, go and do it better. But actual, like, I'm going to role play it, I'm going to listen to you while you do it, I'm going to help you. And if you do that, you'll have two outcomes. Either the person gets better or they don't, but they'll be much easier to then let go of because you try to help them and they probably realize it's not for them themselves. So so expectations, training, a very clear training and coaching. And then the final part, which is probably the most modern and the most missed, is very clear gamification. It's got to be gamified as much as possible. I play games with myself. Like in my living room, I have a rejection wall. Recently started playing Jenga when I cold call. Like just literally, you gotta make it as fun as possible, because if you can make the worst part of the job fun, then the sky's the limit.
Right. Which actually is my last question, which is I like to save the best for last, and you just touched on it. You're hilarious. I mean, speaking of Saturday Night Live, I can absolutely see you as a an actor on Saturday Night Live. You have a cold call comedy show that you just released. Your questions that you're talking with high level executives are funny, and you have figured out how to use humor into a serious, go to market conversation. How is humor such a big impact? Why is it important? How do you get good at it? And I really love to hear your points on this, because I think that's what makes you so unique, and also your calls so effective.
It's a really good question. I would start with the very first thing is like, why is it so easy to reject a cold call? And typically is that because in the mind of the prospect, there's no value, right? It's oh fuck, another salesperson. Jesus Christ, no. So humor humanizes you, and that's the part that makes you like it's easy to reject a salesperson. It's very hard to reject a fellow human being, right? Because people don't like actually saying no that much to others, right? That's why you go to that dinner you don't want to, or why you're friends with the friends of your wife that you don't want to be, or whatever, right? Because you don't like to reject each other. So humor is crucial in pushing the other person to look at you as a human being, right? And I find it funny because I guess a lot of coaches that tell me, oh, I work in Germany. Germans don't have humor. I was like, that's complete bullshit. I work with Germans all the time. They're hilarious. It's just no one tries to make jokes at them, so therefore they don't think they're gonna laugh. They don't do it. Finance. Oh, you can't do this with CFOs. Well, you think CFOs that don't watch Netflix? You think they go home and just watch on loop their funeral service of Winston Churchill? No. They're humans like us. So that's why humor is so important. And also it's because objections come in two type of boxes for me, which is the knee-jerk reaction and is the rational objection. Rational objection is like, I've got a supplier, I've just signed a contract, blah blah. The knee-jerk reaction, I'm not interested, I don't take cold calls. Either you use humor or it's very difficult to defy that, because it's a bit like a chat-up line. If you make the lady laugh, the chance of her wanting to talk to you is way higher. And so that's what I think it's so crucial, to incorporate humor as much as you can in your cold calls. And how to get good at it, look, a little bit is practice, a little bit is obviously a bit of personality. But if you look to my calls, which sadly there's no record of, like a year ago, it wasn't this level. I just started to like factor it in. And actually, I don't know if you know Ryan Serhant, right? That this famous real estate mogul in the US, right? I read his book ages ago, and there's a chapter about taking improv classes. And so I started taking improv classes like 3 months ago. And I've just seen like it just and it's like, I pay like this amazing guy like $50 an hour, and it's better than $500 coaching, and like you actually get more use. The improv is actually something that I would probably factor in a training program if I were to start an strategy from scratch, because it just helps the person connect different things. So I'll give you an example of some things that happened to me recently. Someone was like, "Oh, I'm just waiting on another call." Okay, should I pretend that's me? That would never come up to me before. I don't know. It was like, "Oh, I'm in the middle of doing a really difficult calculus. I better scramble the numbers in your head now, didn't I?" And it's just connecting the dots. and it's the things that I think I would do improv. I would do improv for sure. That would be my biggest tip. And then again, it's the one more thing. Try one. They're telling you I'm not. I think one of my most famous videos is this guy goes, I'm not interested, thank you. And I'm like, well, what if I do it in an Italian accent? And the guy just starts laughing. And it's like, okay, go on. And the guy's like one of my best clients now. so and it's
Really? You closed them. That's the best part. I mean, guys, like that's the story. Like that's the point right there, right? Like improv, that's SNL, Saturday Night Live. You're taking classes, which is incredible. But the reality is, like, that guy said, "No, I'm not interested," and you turned it around with such a unique response, and now he's a client. So yeah, that's huge, man. This has been so much fun. I appreciate you staying up with us. What's up? What are you gonna say?
No, I just had an idea, because on the comedy show last week, someone gave us a phrase, and it was like, and we booked a meeting with it. It was like, what's it? Roses are red, violets are blue. This is a cold call, and I've got something to sell to you. And we actually booked a meeting. I was like, I can't believe it. I was like,
incredible.
I can't believe it's worked. So yeah.
Yep. Again, AI can't do that, right? I've never met someone who's funny, but we'll see. Maybe one day it'll be my avatar and your avatar doing the next podcast together, talking to each other.
Yeah, exactly. And we'll just be watching Netflix on repeat,
Yeah. Yeah. Or on the beaches in Italy, man. We'll be hanging out. So listen, I just wanted to say thank you for your time. You are an amazing asset to our community, and we are huge fans of yours. How does everyone get a hold of you, and what's the best way to connect? I'm assuming LinkedIn, but what are ways to get connected with you?
I would say like Underdog Sales. You'll find me like on every social media. So it's like YouTube, Instagram, TikTok, and LinkedIn. I would also recommend, though, because I don't like to put it on me, but if you're struggling with cold calling, I put together the cold calling wiki, which is literally www.coldcallingwiki.com, and it's a Wikipedia with all of my playbook. I think it's like 27 different pages, and you'll find everything you possibly need on that to help you get better at cold calling.
That's incredible, and I know that site well, and it is amazing value. I can't believe you give it away for free, but I thank you for doing that for the community too. Giulio, it's been great to see you. Thanks so much for joining the Do Hard Things podcast, and we'll talk to you soon, buddy. Have a good one.
Thank you for having me, Gabe.